Welcome to Cut to the Chase, where we talk about compelling legal, regulatory, and public interest information and news. Your host is Gregg Goldfarb, an attorney, entrepreneur, investor, and activist.
All right, it's time for our favorite podcast, Cut to the Chase. I brought Andrew Van Arsdale today to get us some updates on Camp Lejeune litigation. One of the big wigs going on right now, and Andrew also is a big wig. He's a San Diego attorney, also Montana, but he's in San Diego right now. And because it's dropped it's like almost 72 degrees today here in Miami, I put on my Patagonia to sort of connect with my guests. How are you doing today, Andrew?
I'm good, man. I've got the AVA swag on personally, but very similar attire, Greg. So I'm glad we matched that up, man. That's great.
Okay, and the AVA is the initials?
That's the initials. So it's the AVA Law Group, named after its managing partner, Andrew Van Arsdale, of which I am, man. But yeah, we've got a pretty large and growing practice. We practice in California, Nevada, and Montana. Our operations are all out of Montana, but we've got a couple hundred people dedicated to fighting justice for those that need it. Our firm's motto is we represent the people against the powerful, and we are proud of the work that we are doing on behalf of tens of thousands of people across this country.
Now, I did do a little digging, and I see that you do stuff like unfair wages, police brutality, a lot of stuff that people just won't touch anymore because, the wages is a different issue, but the police brutality, it's a big problem, but it's hard to win those cases.
Yeah, they're difficult cases, but people deserve access to the justice system. People deserve to have their rights protected. And, it's, as you know, there's a business side to the law, and there's a law side to the law. Luckily, we've been fortunate enough to take on some big cases and have some big wins. And so we can take some other cases at maybe a break even or even a loss in order to make sure we're living up to our mission. And that's helping people that need us. Yeah,
I can't begin to tell you how many times I get email requests to take a police brutality case, and they just wipe me out over the years. Some of them just went on forever, and single event cases that go on for 10 years. But we're not cutting to the chase. So let's cut to the chase. I actually brought you on. I wanted to get people updates often and frequently on Camp Lejeune, and we talked because we were talking last week about some sex abuse stuff, Boy Scouts and all that with the churches and all those problems. And you told me that you settled some the Camp Lejeune case. I heard people had, and that you have a couple set for trial. So let's talk about that. You settled some Camp Lejeune cases.
Right. So Camp Lejeune Justice Act passed back in August of 2022. As your listeners know, we've got a deadline of August 10th of 2024 to file claims. In September of last year, September of 2023, they rolled out what they termed an elective option, right? And they identified 9 injuries that if you had one of these injuries and you were diagnosed with that injury within 35 years of your last exposure at Camp Lejeune, and you're exposed for at least 30 days, then you could qualify for one of these elective options. And so we were fortunate that we had put our cases forward early. We were very engaged with the Navy, and we at AVA Law Group received some of the very first offers under that elective option. So to date, we have received 11 total offers. We've been able to resolve 9 of those cases, on average around $300,000 per case. And really, it's just an objective determination on how much time were you at the base, what was your diagnosis of your injury, and that fits into a settlement grid that the Department of Navy and Department of Justice put together. I will say that on our initial offers, out of those 9 offers, 4 of them were short. Or out of the 11 offers, 4 of them were short. On 3 of the 4, we were able to push back and say, look, you're offering $150,000 because you think he was only there under a year. But in reality, he was there over a year, and so that offer should be $300,000. And so after months of back and forth and us putting forward additional documents, the Department of Navy did come up, right? So we were able to get some form of true justice in terms of at least this elective option for our clients. On one, they refused to budge, even though we had evidence that it was there. And we ultimately declined their offer, and we'll go ahead and move that case forward in North Carolina.
Nice. And so you were able to negotiate, which I didn't think that there was going to be that at this stage, that possibility.
Yeah, no, I heard that. I was actually just on a Zoom just now, and they're saying, look, DOJ is making these offers, and they're not right offers, and we're putting forward evidence that they were actually exposed for a longer period of time, but they're sticking to whatever the initial offer was. That was not our experience at AVA Law Group. I mean, we had a group on the other side that would listen to us, that would entertain the evidence that we would put forward, and they got to go through a lot of layers of bureaucracy over there, right? I mean, it's the federal government. There's a lot of checks and balances. These are public funds. This is taxpayer money that's going out, and they have to check a lot of boxes. But ultimately, at the end of the day, at least on 75% of the cases, 3 and 4, they ultimately did the right thing, which we're appreciative of.
Well, in the mass tort world, usually justice creeps along very slowly. I mean, you might be hearing about cases for a decade that they just keep going on and they get big. It's 50,000 people, 200,000, 3M. And then there's like, oh my God, they're in bankruptcy. But this case is a little bit different. It's with the government. They've kind of acknowledged that they've caused, just a lot of injuries. And I want to kind of go back to, the 9 injuries that they're doing on this early elective pay. From what I understand, if you have multiple injuries, if you have Parkinson's and testicular cancer, whatever, if you're doing the early elective option, you can only basically select one of the injuries. You can't.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, typically you would have kind of things that would multiply or things that would increase your potential value of your case, right? In a traditional settlement grid on abuse, for example, right? I mean, you've got different levels of abuse. You've got different things that point to knowledge of the institution. You've got different number of times that it happened over a period of time, right? All of those things can lead to an increased amount. On Camp Lejeune, you could be diagnosed, like you said, with both Parkinson's and bladder cancer. Parkinson's in theory is worth $300,000 because of your exposure, and your bladder cancer is worth $150,000. Well, they don't take both of those together. They're not offering you $450,000 because you have 2 injuries. They're saying, no, here's a $300,000 for your Parkinson's. And in exchange for that, you got to sign off, right? You take your pen and you sign a release and says, government, I forever release you from any other claim I ever will have against you for the rest of eternity for my exposure to toxic water at Camp Lejeune. So, folks in that situation are a little hard pressed, man. They don't want to be stuck in litigation for 5 years. But is their case worth more because they're actually suffering from 2 injuries? Yes, right? Even under the government's own settlement grid, I think it should account for that, and it just doesn't. So those are types of cases that we'll probably have to go to North Carolina, and we'll probably have to litigate that issue.
All right. So a lot of people out there might be saying, my God, I'm in the Camp Lejeune. I haven't heard about any, my lawyer hasn't told me about any early offers. I had all these problems. I was, based there for a year. Why should I be worried? Should I not be worried? I have multiple injuries. How does this all play out? I mean, is this just a little nuance to this type of litigation where you have this early opportunity to settle?
Yeah, I mean, I think I was out in DC in early December, and I went out for the actual Purdue Farm argument for the Supreme Court that you and Jason talked about, I think, on your last podcast. But when I was out there, I had the opportunity to meet with the Department of Justice, and specifically about Camp Lejeune. And the things that I took away from that meeting were, look, they understand that both sides of the aisle in Congress can agree on one thing. And maybe it is literally just one thing. And that's that folks at Camp Lejeune that were harmed by this toxic water deserve some compensation, right? I mean, that's why we have the Camp Lejeune Justice Act. There's, I think in the Senate, 88 senators voted yes for this, right? For money damages to individuals that served at Camp Lejeune and their families that have been affected by that water. DOJ 100% acknowledges that. Is what they're struggling with a little bit is, man, it's legitimately a fire hose, right? In 18 months, almost 200,000 claims have been filed. 1,500 cases have been filed in North Carolina. They went from, as a kind of a torts claim unit, looking at a couple thousand cases a year, to now having 200,000 cases to deal with, right? I mean, it's a lot, in fairness to them, and they're scrambling to try to get caught up. They've developed an internal database that isn't quite functional yet, but a lot of the folks that we're representing and the claims that we've submitted to the Navy are now actually populated in that database. They have a communications channel through that database. They've got an entire settlement section in that database. Like, I think they are trying to get caught up, and they are trying to do the right thing. It's going to take a little more time, and ultimately it will get there. But I mean, Greg, you've been around this world for a minute. Mass tort cases can take some time, right? I mean, to be 18 months in, to have, out of the folks that I'm trying to help, have 9 of those cases resolved, money out the door, paid to them, the government waiving liens against, Medicare, Medicaid, VA related healthcare, saying, look, this is not going to affect your disability payments one bit. We're not looking to get repaid on any disability payments. We paid you on Camp Lejeune toxic water. Like that's kind of a win, right? And so, they are getting it to a place where I think we'll see more offers. And ultimately, we have trials. They're going to start in October and November of this year. And we have had our jury trials taken away from us. The courts in North Carolina 2 weeks ago said, look, we don't think the Camp Lejeune Justice Act gives you an unambiguous right to a jury trial, even though right to a jury trial is specifically mentioned in the Camp Lejeune Justice Act. The court decided that was not unambiguous enough. And so they said no more jury trials, but we still get the opportunity to argue our case in front of a judge. And we get that judge to be able to look at the evidence, which the facts are on our side, the law is on our side, and it just becomes a question of damages. And so I think if we can start to have some of these conversations, like, look, if you have those multiple injuries like Parkinson's and bladder cancer, isn't that going to be worth a little bit more? And if we get a judge to agree with that and set a valuation there, I think that helps the parties figure out a way to start resolving these cases on a much grander scale.
All right, so I want to try to clear up a couple of misconceptions, because this whole thing is really designed, my show is designed to educate, inform the people out there. Some people have attorneys, some people are on the fence. Should I jump in? Should I not? I was there, but I wasn't a Marine. So number one, you don't have to have been a Marine. You just have to have lived there, or you don't even have to be related to a Marine. You just have to have lived there for at least 30 days and then have one of these injuries. We're going to get to the injuries.
Not even live there, right? I mean, we've got some civilian workers that lived off base, but they worked on base for a few years, right? So it's 30 days of exposure. So 30 times 24, if you've got that amount of hours that you were exposed to this toxic water, in theory, you qualify. So yeah, it's for the Marines that were there. It's for their family members that were there. It's for the civilian workers that were there. Any of those individuals would qualify. And I want to point out, Greg, a lot of people think this is a bunch of crap, right? Oh, lawyers, a big cash grab. The government never does the right thing. This is just a bunch of crap. It's not. And the folks that I put money in their bank accounts and their lives are much better today as a result of the Camp Lejeune Justice Act will tell you that exact same thing. Look, these Marines took an oath to uphold and protect this country. And the idea of asking the federal government or holding the federal government accountable almost seems like they're going against that oath, but it's just not true, right? This is something that Congress has mandated. This is something the executive branch of our government said, yes, we have to take care of these men. Our government failed this population of people. They failed to protect them. They failed to warn them. They failed to do better than they should have. And that's what this act is, right? So anybody that was affected in that way should come forward. They should take advantage of this. The whole program was set up to help people, and to sit back on the sidelines and say, oh, this is a bunch of crap, I'm not going to get involved. That's the wrong attitude. Come forward. Let this government make it up to you. You can come forward by yourself, or you can hire me. You can hire some other lawyer to do it for you. It's all on contingency fee basis. You don't pay any money out of pocket, but hopefully you're able to hold these guys accountable. They get you some resources to make your life better. That's the idea here.
All right. So the 30 days doesn't have to be consecutive, and you don't have to be a Marine while you were there or related to a Marine. That's misconception number one. So listen, if you're bouncing around, you're coming in and out over, even 30 years ago, if you're not sure, don't wait and say, boy, I'm not sure. I want to see how this plays out. I don't understand. Because like you said, the deadline to file a claim to preserve your rights is August 10th of this year.
Right.
Okay.
August 10th of this year.
All right. So we're down to like 6 more months. And apparently you said 200,000 people have already filed claims.
200,000 people filed claims. Yes. Well, the count was 170,000 as of about 10 days ago. So we're getting close to 200,000.
And close to 3M land, pretty much. All right. So now the injuries, I know, again, this is something where a little information might sometimes harm people. They hear about tier 1, they hear about tier 2, tier 3. Now you're telling them that there's 9 types of injuries that would qualify for this early pay. But explain what is the, I mean, what is the early pay? 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 What is the what types of injuries do you have to have suffered? And, you know, do you need to be a doctor to basically say, I qualify because I had, you know, neurological issues, I had bladder issues, I had Parkinson's, I had my pregnancy was botched. I'm not even really sure what caused it. My doctor never said it was because of water contamination. How does this play out?
Yeah, and your doctor's not really going to know that, right? They're not going to know that you were exposed to the chemicals in that water. I mean, you didn't know it at the time. I mean, the only reason that we know how bad this was is because of activists like Jerry Insinger and Mike Partain that marched up to DC and held them accountable through Congress. And Congress demanded that the Navy and the Marine Corps, you know, divulge records about how bad this water was, because guess what? They were testing it at the time and they knew all these carcinogens were in it, and they didn't do enough about it. So that's what we know now. So yeah, your doctor's not going to be able to tie maybe one thing to another. But to answer your question, Greg, if you're exposed to that water for 30 days or more between 53 and 87 till the end of 87, call somebody, right? I mean, I will talk to anybody that has had that exposure and start looking about what has happened to you, right? And maybe you're okay today. Maybe you got some neurological issues. We've got some tests online that you gotta kind of run through and see how severe those are. But this water affects you in a real way. This water stays with you for eternity, right? This water, if you're not sick today, could make you sick tomorrow. And it's important to try and hold the government accountable here. In terms of kind of individual injuries, the court's looking at on their quote unquote track 1 cases. These are the first cases will go to trial. We've got bladder cancer, leukemia, kidney cancer, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and Parkinson's disease. Just this week, they came out with track 2. Those injuries are prostate cancer, kidney disease, lung cancer, liver cancer, and breast cancer. Again, that is not an exhaustive list. That is just to tell you that's how bad this water was. Like this water was bad, and it caused a lot of diseases. I've got a list of 42 diseases that my team's screening against based on the chemicals that were in that water and what those chemicals can cause. These 42 separate diseases that people have, right? These are 10 cases. These are 10 of maybe the arguably strongest cases. Like there's no doubt in the world that this chemical caused this. And so those are the types of cases that are going first, but there's a heck of a lot of injuries that these chemicals could cause. So if you were there, if you were exposed to this water, talk to somebody, find out what your rights are, find out what your ability to recover is under the Camp Lejeune Justice Act.
Okay, so I just want to emphasize that, you know, when you have a condition, you have some type of cancer or neurological condition, you go to your doctor. The doctors are not, you know, it's not really their job to say, how did you get this? Their job is to treat it. So they're moving forward. They don't, you know, maybe if there's something ongoing, they might want to say, hey, listen, you know, you can't sit there and put your head in the stove all the time or whatever, you know, stop doing that for you know, let's
Right.
let's move past that. But people, I think, well, my doctor didn't say again if I got this condition from water contamination, I don't have a case. That's not the situation. Your best bet is to call an attorney like Andrew. I've had a couple of other people on here, that Tyler Vale, that have also talked about Camp Lejeune. You know, there's plenty of qualified attorneys. And listen, people, if you've been out there, if you've been in litigation before and you didn't like your lawyer, you thought you got shafted, you hate the legal system, forget about that. If you were there and you have an issue, you know, you should get compensated. Just put that other stuff behind you. Last topic, another reason why I brought you on here, because I like to bring trial lawyers on to my program, because there's a lot of lawyers out there that, you know, sign up clients, but they don't try their cases, and they don't even tell their clients that they haven't tried a case in 5 years or whatever. But you, I know, do. And I think you said to me that you have some of the trials coming up in Camp Lejeune.
Yeah, so out of those track 1 cases, we have 4 of the bellwethers. So I had one of the lawyers in my office was in Cleveland yesterday defending a deposition on one of our Parkinson's disease clients. His trial, we hope, will go forward in October of this year, right? And so the idea behind that is a bellwether. It's kind of what it sounds like. It's like a weather balloon that goes up in the sky, and you kind of judge which way the wind's going to blow, right? The idea behind these cases, these quote unquote bellwether cases, is put that weather balloon up there, right? Put our evidence on in front of a judge. Let that judge see that we're right, that yes, our client was there. Yes, they were exposed to a bunch of toxins. And yes, that's got a pretty good chance of having caused his Parkinson's disease. And once we do that, we talk about damages. how has that affected his life? What is that case worth? What have similar cases been worth? What does that look like? And ultimately we get a number back, right? And maybe that number is $1 million. Well, the government would have paid this man $300,000 under their elective option, but the judge said, no, that case is worth $1 million. All of a sudden, obviously that's good for our individual client, right? Because we went from 300,000 to $1 million, but it also is good for everybody else that has Parkinson's disease behind them, because everybody else can say, well, look, man, Larry, he got $1 million, right? Come on, government. I don't want 300. I want closer to $1 million. And that doesn't mean we'll all of a sudden have a settlement across all Parkinson's diseases for $1 million, but it does give us leverage in the negotiations with the DOJ to say, look, 300 isn't enough for this category of case. And I just proved that in front of this judge. And we can keep doing it and we can keep bringing individual cases, but why don't we sit down and get a little more realistic about what the value of that specific case is worth based on these different variables. And so that's the point of these bellwether cases. They're for those individuals to go forward and kind of test the weather, right? See which way that wind is blowing. One, make sure we win, which we will win. And two, start setting valuations on damages. And so that's what we're looking at. And those trials start in hopefully October. A date hasn't been set yet, but based on the discovery deadlines and everything else that's going on right now, we should have trial dates in October.
All right. So I just, people are like, whoa, we started out the program talking about, the elective option, people actually settling the cases. Now you're talking about trials, but there's no jury trials. So basically what we have is we're going forward on every front. Early settlements. We're going to try to settle cases during the litigation. We're going to try cases in front of the judge. They're bench trials. They're not jury trials. There's no punitive damages. So I know people see like, oh my God, look at that. This company was punished $1 billion for their bad conduct. That's not going to happen here. But the judges are going to be able to get through these trials a lot faster. And when the Department of Justice sees that, all right, well, we're only going to be trying these cases in front of a handful of judges, and this is what this judge thinks this case is worth, they can sign off on settling these cases. I think they need to have that in the hopper so that years from now, when people come and audit this whole thing and they're like, God, the government was just giving out money like it was going out of style. No, we've tried cases. We set a value. We know what's going on.
Right. 100%, 100%. And the other thing that we have going on in the court system right now is we're waiting on an order from the judges on a motion for partial summary judgment. We think the Camp Lejeune Justice Act says, look, you were there 30 days. That's your exposure. You qualify, right? We understand that that is enough exposure to create an injury. And that's that. DOJ says, well, sure, maybe, but the base is big and water over here was really bad and water over here maybe wasn't so bad. So we want to count individual molecules. Your guy, Larry in Cleveland, let's see how much water did he drink on day 1 and day 2. And this guy's there, 27 months. They want to count up every molecule that he ingested or took a shower with or ate in or bathed in or swam in. And we say, look, that was not the purpose or the intent of the Camp Lejeune Justice Act. That's why it says 30-day of exposure. We think that specific causation isn't necessary, right? We got to prove that those chemicals at that time can cause this injury, right? By this equipoise standard, which is as likely or not. And if we do that, we win on liability and we can talk damages. So we're expecting to get that order out here in the next 2 weeks, Greg. And that just kind of goes to this judicial efficiency. If we got to put on expert testimony about every molecule that my guy ingested, those trials go a little bit longer, right? If that issue's already settled and we just talk about make sure that we can prove these chemicals were in the water at the time that our guy was there and that these chemicals do cause this injury. And in fact, this gentleman has that injury. I think these cases go really, really quick in terms of trial, maybe a couple days at most, really, to put on our evidence and to get to damages. And I think we'll see these judges really start to move cases in a real way if we don't reach any sort of settlement.
All right. Well, that will do it for this episode of Cut to the Chase. Andrew Van Arsdale, AVA Law. I'm going to send you his website so you can check out all the things that he does. He's not just a mass tort guy. He's not just an attorney. He actually tries his cases, and look at this guy. He's settled some of the Camp Lejeune cases. I can't believe that on my show. Andrew,
all right, man,
coming on, my man.
Thank you very much, Greg. We're going to settle some more. I'll be back on to talk about that in the future, my friend.
All right, beautiful, beautiful.
That's all for this episode of Cut to the Chase. But before you go, will you open up your podcast app and give us a 5-star review? You can also leave a comment about what you liked most or other topics you'd like us to cover. And please be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any upcoming shows. Thanks, everybody. Be safe out there.